You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Gold, crude oil, corn, soybeans, and more. With so many tradable products, the futures options market can be an intimidating place. How can you possibly keep track of the latest trading developments across so many different products? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Welcome to This Week in Futures Options, the program designed to help active futures options traders stay on top of this ever-changing marketplace. Each week, we'll break down the top trades, hot products, volatility explosions, and much more. This Week in Futures Options streams live, so be sure to check out our live stream via the Mixlr app. That's MIXLR. Or join our live chat room at mixlr.com/options-insider. Whether you're an experienced veteran or a newcomer looking to separate the wheat from the lean hogs, This Week in Futures Options has the information you can't find anywhere else. This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This Week in Futures Options is also brought to you by FTSE Russell, a leading global provider of benchmarks, analytics, and data solutions. For more information, please visit ftserussell.com, cboe.com, and cmegroup.com. And now, get ready to break down the latest futures options trading activity. It's time for This Week in Futures Options.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for TWIFO, This Week in Futures Options, the program where we break it all down. What the heck is lighting stuff up over there at CME Group this week? We're going to break it all down. Maybe it's dairy. Maybe it's metals. Maybe it's ags. Maybe it's a whole bunch more. You got to tune in every week to find out. Every episode of TWIFO, completely its own beast, unique snowflake, if you will. You got to tune in every week to see what we're talking about. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever scintillating, at least we tend to think so, Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you, of course, if you're one of our many on-demand listeners, and we know you are legion, we're seeing the numbers, July, hottest month in the history of the network. So every month this year has been just record numbers. So we love you all out there. If you listen on demand, all we ask, if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. It really does help. The new people continue to discover the program. And yes, there are new people continuing to discover these markets day after day, week after week, month after month. So you can help point them in the right direction with your ratings and reviews. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you want to get access to this show live, everything else we do throughout the week, you want to get exclusive content like our great pro Q&As and options oddities coming up tomorrow, then of course, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go. And of course, it's time for us to get on into the movers and shakers report.
It's time to find out what's rallying on the light side and falling to the dark side at CME Group this week. It's time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Movers and Shakers Report. By the way, supposed to have the once and future and now present Dr. Vix, Mr. Russell Rhodes, joining us in the hot seat this week. Looks like he's having some technical difficulties. So we'll see if we can get him sourced out. Maybe he'll make a fashionably late appearance in the middle of the show, as he is wont to do. Meanwhile, though, the party has to keep on going. The show must go on. It is time for the Movers and Shakers report. And since it's just me, I get to pick this week, listeners, where we begin, to the light side or to the dark side. And you know what? If you follow CME on Twitter, listeners, or if you follow us at Options over there on Twitter, you can see this report for yourselves right before showtime it goes out. And you will see that it is quite the challenge to put together a bottom five this week. In fact, according to this chart, is only 4. We have a dark 4 this week, listeners. Wow. I don't think that's ever happened before in the history of the show. We've had some pretty biased weeks, but we've always been able to squeeze out a bottom or top 5. This week, allow me to present to you your bottom 4, your dark 4. Might have a title for the episode, listeners, The Dark 4. Beware the Dark 4. Because they're actually all in the rates. The only thing that was down this week, listeners. Number 4 in our dark 4 this week, the 5-year note. How often do we even talk about that? That's how low we're getting, listeners. That's how much of the bottom of the barrel we are scraping. We're talking about the 5-year. It's always fun to start the show off with some humor. 5-year note, off 0.65%. Number 3, let's get a little bit more reasonable. Let's get out to the 10-year, 1.06%. To the dark side, numero due, it is the 30-year, going far out the curve to negative 2.1%. And then our old friend, the Eurodollar, is off 2.65%. It is pretty much a crazy week out there, listeners. If you listen to some of our other shows this week, you know we've been pretty much rally ho mode all week long, and that is the case here. I mean, a dark 4, that's just ridiculous. I've been doing this for a while. I don't think I've ever seen a dark 4, so that's pretty funny. I'm just looking at this list of green. I mean, you pick your poison. Feeder cattle, it's all green this week. WTI, but we'll do our actual top 5 this week, listeners. You'll see from number 5 is usually what is number 1. That's how much of a mover or shaker week it is to the upside. Number 5 this week, good old SRW wheat, so Chicago wheat. It was number 5 in the other direction last week, off 6.12%. This week, it is up 6.23%, so pretty much getting back what it gave up last week. We know from last week's show, we know that Chicago wheat can put up some numbers. KC wheat, not as much, but Chicago wheat can do some numbers. And then number 4, we have copper, up 6.43%. Then number 3, we have the first of our 3 frequent offenders this week. It is Bitcoin, up 9.73%. Been quite the run for the bulls in crypto out there of late. Maybe we'll hang out in crypto a little bit this week. You know, we don't get a chance to do it that often. We do have the Crypto Rundown, listeners. If you haven't checked out that show and you're intrigued by the crypto options and indeed the crypto marketplace overall, then you should be checking out the Crypto Rundown over there every Monday, the Crypto Rundown. Check it out after the option block. And, of course, numero due here, we've got RBOB. So back to the energy space, up 9.8%. It was number 2 in the last week, I should say, off 8.77%. So pretty much getting back what it lost last week as well. And then our number 1 mover this week, my goodness, this one, they've been coming for it for a while because, you know, obviously housing starts have been low. People haven't been buying new houses en masse the way they were, let's say, a year ago. So demand for lumber has been low. They've been coming for it this week. It is back with a vengeance. Lumber, number 1, up 25.14%. Number 1 to the other direction last week, off 9%. How many assets can move 25% in a week, listeners? Not many. Lumber is one of them. My goodness. Guess people are building houses again. Intriguing times. The E-mini Russell 2000 was up nearly 5% this week. Such a crazy week. It only comes in at number 6. Doesn't even make the top 5. That's how crazy of a week it is to the light side this week. Listen, my goodness. Green on the screen for days. You know, we've got copper in there. We've got gold flirting with the light side out here this week. So maybe we'll mix it up and we'll start in metals first.
Werewolves beware. It's time to explore the options activity in silver, gold, and other shiny things. It's time to talk metals.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Metals, the portion of the show where we break down everything going on in the shiny stuff. And also, on occasion, we can get base. Maybe we'll get base today. By the way, you guys know where to find these reports and a whole bunch more. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO. TWIFO is the place to go. Once you're there, get into that asset class, drop down, go all the way to the bottom to metals. Then we'll go over to product family, and we're going to go base metals, down a few notches. And then you're going to get into copper. You'll see copper number 4 on our movers and shakers this week, up 6.43%. Decent week for copper, 17,300 contracts. It's kind of around silver these days in that in the volume numbers. Many days it can actually eclipse it, not so much today. But an interesting week out here in copper nonetheless. Copper right now, almost 370, 3.69 in that front future, up about 4.15% just since Monday's session. So a lot of this rally in copper coming this week. In terms of that 17,000, man, talk about a very biased contract. 72% of it came in the SEP contract that has 14 days to go. So I guess we're going to hang out there this week, listeners, because that's pretty much where all the paper is. It's right at our cutoff, right about 14 days. So we can hang out there. The vol in copper this week, I keep wanting to say silver, listeners. Vol in copper is at about a 27, off nearly 3 points, about 2.7 points this week. Skew-wise, last week we saw the puts a little bit bid, 1.1% bid. This week, nearly 4%, 3.9% bid. The calls last week, 1.7% rich. So folks were coming for the calls a little bit. They wanted to get some call action. This week, nobody cares. They are 0.3% cheap. So the calls are pretty much unched. You're looking at that skew out there in that contract, listeners. The call wing is pretty much flat, which is kind of interesting. Let's get on out to what was lighting it up this week, and it seems like it was pretty much 380 calls, 3.8 calls were pretty much all the action this week, doing 2,100 contracts, almost 2,200. The big day was Tuesday, 1,600 going up, pretty much all that opening. So opening on the 380s on Tuesday. It's like I don't see, well, actually, there also, it could have been a fly, actually, now that I look at it, because 800 of the 370s went up and 800 of the 390s also went up. So that would be a traditional fly, 1x2x1, listeners. So if you put it all together, you got 800 of the 370s, 1,600 of the 380s, and then 800 of the 390s. So that looks like that accounts for the lion's share of our paper this week, why pretty much 72% of the volume was going up in this contract. It looks like it traded, more traded after it, but it wasn't that fly. It looks like other strikes, other call strikes in this contract were busy on Wednesday. All that went up on Tuesday, by the way, that fly. Wednesday, we saw about 1,700 of the 3 3/4 go up and 1,500 of the 4s going up. So pretty active out there as well. So intriguing stuff, pretty much all upside calls, and all of it in this one contract that expires in 2 weeks. I mean, if you add up all this, talking 75 and under 5, 88,000 of it just in this, just in these 4 or 5 calls here. So a lot of paper going up here in the upside in copper. You guys trade copper? Are you intrigued by it? Have you gotten base in your metals trading? I know we talk about gold a lot. Maybe we'll squeeze that in here a little bit later today as well. But copper seems like intriguing stuff this week. By the way, also 2 half puts going up out here in December this year. Also pretty active, doing a little over 2,000 contracts. 1,000 yesterday, all that opening, and then 1,000 again today. So maybe they took them off or maybe they added more. Either way, 2 half puts going up in December pretty actively out here as well in copper. So intriguing stuff, not perhaps what I expected, but that's kind of why you have to look at the numbers, right, listeners? Since we're hanging out in metals, let's dive into gold really quickly, too. I think it's the metal most of you pay attention to if you are going to look in the metal space. Some of you probably look at some silver as well, your Uncle Mike fans out there. But other than that, gold is the big dog, doing 127,000 contracts this week. Gold right now, 1792.9, so back shy of that 1,800 level. You know, everyone's kind of been waiting for a while. Dan Gramza even said it on the show last week. You know, it's kind of about time that gold did something. And now it's up a little bit this week, but it seemed like it had a bit of a delayed reaction to Pelosi's visit to Taiwan last week. Those are usually the kinds of things that tend to drive some interest in gold, and that's what we saw last week. This week, a little bit of interest, up 0.7%, not even going to crack our top 5 in a crazy week like this where everything's to the upside, but intriguing stuff nonetheless. Again, about almost 130,000 contracts on the tape this week. Let's see, of that, about 20% going up in the DEES contracts. I guess we'll hang out there. The DEES futures at about an 1803. The vol in gold, you know, gold never known for being the most volatile products, 15 and a quarter, off about 0.6 of a point this week In terms of skew, the puts last week, 0.8 of a point sheep. This week, exactly the same. So the puts haven't changed, pretty much flat. And the calls last week were where the action was, 4.1% bid last week. This week, 7.6% bid. So the call is catching a bid, which makes sense because it's like the 18.5 calls out here in December were where the action was this week. Let's break it down, see what we find out here. And it looks like all that action is going up today. We saw 6,000 going up, 5,400 of that today. And also 5,400 of the 19.5. So it looks like we've got maybe an 18.5, 19.5. We've also got almost 2,700 of the 2,000. So maybe we've got a bit of a funky, the funky flies in gold every week, pretty much like clockwork list. There's two things you can kind of rely on when you're doing the Twifo show. One is these crazy flies to the upside in the metals, and the other is someone blasting away on garbage puts in SPY or E-mini, E-mini S&P. And pretty much we're getting that again here this week in gold. So 5,400 of the 18.5, 19.5 vertical. Also, we see about 2,700 of the 2,000s. So it doesn't line up well at all. I mean, it lines up numerically, you're talking, but but strike-wise, it's strange to have it be that way. 2 by 2 by 1. That's a weird way to round it up. And also 1,200 of the 1,800s going up today. So there's all sorts of paper going up out here today, listeners. And this is far upside in Dees for gold. Have you guys been playing in gold, or have you kind of washed your hands of it, given the fact that it is, I think, to put it mildly, dramatically underperformed over the course of the past 6 months? Hit us up. Let us know. I'm curious your thoughts on all things metals. Let's see if we find any other interesting paper. How about 2,200? Is that a little bit more interesting for you, listeners? These were going up here in March of next year. We have the 2,200, 2,300 vertical. Someone took it off 2,500 times on Wednesday. So 5,000 contracts total, obviously. That was an interesting vertical. Maybe they think not going to make it there by March of next year. Getting a little bit closer, deciding to maybe keep what premium on that they had, or they could have sold it. But given how we've seen gold paper play out in the past, they probably bought this. So they're probably getting the heck out of Dodge and keeping what remains of that premium that they shelled out on here for this one. 2,200, 2,300. See, any other? 2,200s are kind of active. This also, again, we talked about those in March. Got 19 halves also going up in June of next year, 2,500 times. Pretty much 2,000 of that on Wednesday, all opening. No other verticals against it. So just like straight up opening, and then another about 500 today. So total of about 2,500 of these 19 half calls in June of next year, also going up. Intriguing. That's of June of next year. So you got a while for that. Can gold crack the 19 half level by June of next year, listeners? I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know as we keep on rolling into some other products. I mentioned Chicago wheat kind of lighting it up this week. So perhaps we'll hang out in the ags next.
It's time to get our hands dirty exploring the latest options, trades, and trends in corn, wheat, soybeans, and more. It's time to talk ags.
All right, everybody, welcome to the world of ags. Been making it on our radar a little bit more these days. Of course, obviously, with everything going on in Ukraine, the concerns about food supply, ags have been very much in the focus since the invasion. Wheat obviously shooting up, then coming back off, rallying a little bit again this week. 811.5 is where Chicago wheat is right now, up 35.75 points, or about 4.6%. Just this week, you factor in all the way back to last week's show, it's up about 6.25%. Hence, it's number 5 spot on our movers and shakers report this week. 57,000 contracts going up in the wheat, so a little bit light this week. It was about 78,000 this time last week, so interesting how volume will get a little bit. Again, it is August, so not exactly known for the most high volume period in the market's history. Mid-August and, late December usually tend to challenge each other for some of the driest, thinnest periods of the year. In terms of action, 48% of that 57,000 contracts coming, once again, in the SEP contract that goes out in about 15 days. So playing pretty close to the vest here for ags. Usually that's an equity will do that. They'll play in the near dated contracts, but the ags tend to go out a little bit this week. 48%, so nearly half of the paper going up in a contract that has about 2 weeks to go. 811.5, like I said, is where we find our future right now. The vol out there, right about a 40. That's off about 1.6 points from where it was this time last week. So still pretty frothy compared to a lot of other products. We were just talking about gold. No vol to be found there. The equities, VIX is right around a 20 handle. So you're talking nearly double that out here in wheat. So a little bit of vol to be found. In terms of skew, last week the puts 0.8% cheap. This week 2.8% cheap. So getting cheaper. The calls last week 1.8% bid. This week about 2%. So the calls kind of hanging out. And in terms of the action, looks like it was the 7.5 puts going up in that contract that has about 15 days to go. They were the volume leader this week, doing 3,723 contracts. Almost half of that, almost 1,700 going up today, about 1,100 yesterday, 700 on Monday, and only a couple hundred on Tuesday. That goes closing most of the week, so obviously we don't know about today's paper, but closing all week and opening today, we've seen stranger things, but if past is prologue, they were perhaps closing today as well. So intriguing stuff, a lot of closing on these 7.5 puts. Maybe they feel we're not going to get there in the next couple of weeks, or maybe they were short those, deciding to take those bad boys off. Either way, a lot of closing paper here. Again, if we look at the skew action out there, the puts got a little bit cheaper this week. So intriguing stuff. Maybe they were closing out some long puts that they had. Also, about 1,600 of the 780 puts going up. The big day was Wednesday, about 1,000. Those were more back and forth opening to closing. We also saw 3,200 of the 8.5 calls going out in a couple of weeks as well, lighting it up this week. The big day was Tuesday, 1,300 opening there, and the rest of the week kind of scattered. Looks like mostly opening throughout the week. So 8.5 calls and 7.5 puts leading the dance out here. Interesting. Almost, the paper doesn't line up correctly for a risk reversal, but it has the whiff of it. But it doesn't seem like it is. Listeners, just unrelated paper going up in similar numbers in a similar contract out here. Let's go out here as well. Also, the par, the 1,000 calls in December, going up about 2,200 times this week as well. The big day for those, Tuesday about 1,000, and then about 800 on Wednesday. The rest kind of scattered throughout the week. Opening most of the week, so 1,000 by December. Actually, no, I misspoke. These are the March. These are the March of 2023. So 1,000 by March of next year. We were flirting with levels like that not too long ago and above it. So maybe they're seeing a little bit more consternation in Ukraine, and as a result, maybe a little bit of tightening of that food supply over the course of the next year or so. We shall find out here. Looks like that's pretty much it for the ags here this week. And given the fact that it's moving this week, and we haven't talked about it on the show, and it's starting to actually do a little bit of paper, which is kind of interesting, I think we might actually head out into the cryptos next.
It's time to explore the volatile world of Bitcoin, Ether, and more. It's time to talk about crypto. All
right, listeners, welcome to the ever-evolving world of cryptocurrencies. This is where it's good to not have Russell on the show because he would poo-poo these. He washed his hands of crypto a little while ago, so he would have naught to add on this segment. He would say, why are you talking about cryptos? And we'd have a big back and forth. It would be fun, but I digress here. Let's get on into what's lighting it up out here in all things cryptocurrencies, listeners. And you guys know where to find these, by the way. They have their own segment. Just go all the way up from the metals and down from ags into cryptocurrencies. They're second from the top there. Then we're going to go into indexes first, and then we're going to check out the old BTC, a.k.a. Bitcoin, of course, still the big dog out there. And in terms of Bitcoin coming into showtime, 24,235, up 1,275 handles just this week, or 5.5%. Of course, you go back to last week's show, it's up 9.75%. So quite the rally out there in Bitcoin. Are you folks back in the cryptos? Are you buying what the crypto market is selling out here right now? You think this rally has some teeth? Or we got a little bit of a crazy crypto winter bounce going on out here? Either way, Bitcoin rallying, ETH rallying hard. Maybe we'll squeeze a little ETH on here too. 757 contracts going up in these big Bitcoin options. You might say that's not even 1,000. That's nothing. And you would be correct. But also, given the history of this contract and the fact this is a 5x multiplier, so you're talking over 100 grand worth notional for these contracts here. That's a pretty beefy contract. So the fact that they're threatening 1,000 is nothing to sneeze at out here. This is a contract that could do, and used to, 20 contracts in a week. So it is growing by leaps and bounds, even if the overall numbers are still pretty low. Let's look really quickly at the skew out here. Let's go to 51% of it is going up in the contract. Again, that's going out in about 15 days, so we'll hang out there. The skew there, the puts about 5% bid for the at-the-money. The calls 2% cheap. So that's interesting. We were looking at a very negative skew for quite some time out here. In Bitcoin and in ETH, it got extremely negative back in mid-June when the sell-off was really hitting its stride. we have seen that mitigate. We were actually joking on the Crypto Rundown this week. Maybe we might see a positive skew again. That used to be the way Bitcoin and ETH were. It was all bid all the time to the upside. These days, the puts were kind of leading the dance, and we see that again this week out here. So if you're interested in a kind of equity-related type skew, bid to the puts, discount to the calls, Bitcoin's got you covered out here this week. It was the 1,500 puts doing 200 here in August as well as in September. So maybe you got a bit of a roll going on out here. Yeah, it looks like they were opening here in September. Let's see, were they closing? In August they were. So they rolled their 15,000 puts from August to September 200 times this week. That counts for 400 of our 767 contracts this week, listeners. But it is interesting to see some funds have obviously discovered this. They are starting to use it to play more out here, which is kind of intriguing. Have you guys played around with these contract, listeners? I'm curious for your thoughts. Let's look at ETH really quick. The big ETH is, from an options perspective, obviously, and a non-starter, still has the futures. Let's go out to the micro indexes. That's where, there we go. All right. And looking right now, the micro Bitcoin, which is, of course, the contract most of you would be playing in as opposed to the 5X regular contract. We've seen 1,500 contracts going up out here this week as well. So that's something. It's not the most active week we've seen out here, but it's something out here. It looks like the most active out here was by the way, I said 200 or so is where we're hanging out. Looks like the 24,500 calls doing 205 is the big dog here. In August, 30,000 calls also trading a bit in September. I want to get out to ETH, though, really quickly, the micro ETH, because ETH, if you've been paying attention, listeners, has been rocking and rolling. Over 8,000 contracts out there this week in the micro ETH option. So they are starting to come alive out there as well. ETH right now, 1894, so starting to threaten back to that 2,000 level again. And it looks like it was the 2,500 puts in December that were leading the dance, with 1,500 of those bad boys going up. About 1,200 on Tuesday and about 400 on Monday. So actually looks like about 1,600 going up this week. And also looks like we have about 400 of the 2,000 puts going up on Tuesday as well. So maybe a little bit of a ratio vertical going up out there. But 2,500 puts, that's an interesting use case. In the money puts in ETH, we don't see that too often. So that's kind of intriguing in and of themselves. The micro futures have been lighting it up. The options are starting to get some traction out here as well. I'm curious for you folks. Have you folks experimented at all in these micro contracts? You know, one of the things that holds people out of the crypto space is that they're concerned about counterparty risk. They're concerned about clearing. They're concerned about wallets, all these issues you don't really have in other markets. So the CME products at least eliminate a lot of those concerns. You have an exchange you know has been around for a while, probably going to be around for a while. The clearing is all there, counterparty risk taken care of. So it eliminates a lot of those concerns. So then it's up to you whether you're interested in the crypto space or not. But intriguing stuff. It certainly is an interesting gateway for a lot of people who maybe are a little bit timid, a little bit spooked about diving into the world of crypto. Speaking of being spooked, and a lot of people are spooked at the equities right now. So let's go check them out.
It's time to explore the volatility swings, skew changes, and hot options trades in your favorite indices. It's time to talk equities.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time to dive into the wonderful, the ever-exciting world of equities. You guys know where to find these. Pop out of crypto, go down 2 slots on the reports to equity indexes. Then we're going to hang out in U.S. Index E-mini, Russell 2000 first. Maybe we'll take a sojourn into the S&P or NASDAQ if you guys want. See who's blasting away at near-dated puts this week. Before we do that, though, let's set the table from a vol perspective. Coming into showtime, we have RVX, so the VIX of the Russell 2000, at about 24 3/4, down about 1 3/4 points from last week. VIX at about a 20 1/4. That's down about 1.7 points from where it was this time last week. Of course, if you're paying attention yesterday, listeners, you saw VIX break the 20 handle ever so briefly yesterday before popping back over it again today. VVIX 91 1/4. That's up about 7 points from where it was this time last week. So starting to get frothy again. Remember when we said we broke into a 70 handle in VVIX, we said, hey, we have not been here since the start of the pandemic. And B, even before the pandemic, we didn't really hang out with a 70 handle in VVIX for very long. And that is the case again right now, 91 1/4. A vol Q, so the at-the-money vol of the NASDAQ, 24 1/2. That's down about 1 2/3 points from where it was this time last week. That puts that VIX to RVX spread at about 4.5. That's about a tenth of a point tighter than last week. And the VIX to vol Q spread, 4.25, actually pretty much unched. If you need to know, 0.02 wider than this time last week. Effectively unched. Our producers like to get very precise sometimes, which is always amusing to me. Let's get on out to the Russell 2000 and see what's lighting up. Actually, Russell 2000 putting up some numbers this week. Over 20,000 contracts on the tape again after a few weeks of kind of light paper. And that makes sense. Russell 2000 is moving. Like we said, it just barely missed our top 5 this week. Came in at number 6, up 4.93%. It's up 3% just this week. And we were just talking about it. Just talking about it on the last show. Man, how interesting would it be if we can get back up to that 2000 level? 1979.60 right now, listeners. So we are flirting with the Russell 2000 back at 2000 level. I'll have to call up Sean, get him back on the show so we can have our belated party from the last time Russell 2000 broke 2000 to the upside. Checking on his fence, see how it's doing out there as well. Let's go out here to the action right now. 1979.60 is where we're hanging out, listeners. The vol and the Russell 2000, we're going to go out to the SEP contract, has about 36 days to go. This one doing about, looks like about 28% of the paper this week. That's the most active contract out here. Looks like the vol here, about a 23.10 off. Not quite a half a point, about 0.4 of a point this week. In terms of skew, last week the puts 13.2% bid. This week, getting juicy, 14.9%. Still not quite as juicy as they were, but getting a little bit juicier. The calls last week, 8.6% cheap. This week, 10.9% cheap. And in terms of the action leading the dance, looks like it was 1980 calls. So an excellent year and also an active call this week. Looks like they did about 800, almost all of that on Tuesday. Looks like actually it was a 1980, 1960 vertical going up about 800 times, opening on both on Tuesday. So that's an interesting one. That would not have been my first choice for trades of the week out here in the Russell 2000. But that's why you run the numbers, right, listeners, to see what's actually going up out here. So the 1960, 1980 vertical going up about 800 times. Intriguing stuff. You like that one, listeners? It's kind of in the money now. I mean, it wasn't when they put it on, obviously. So that one's looking pretty good. It's still open. They haven't come for it yet. So we're at about a 1980, close to it right now. So looking pretty good on this one. They have, again, about 35 days to go. So this is one of those cases where maybe they wish they put it on in the weeklies because this one would be a screaming home run. Right now it's looking good, but they have to wait a little bit to get a little bit of that decay out of there. Intriguing stuff nonetheless. Have you guys been playing in small caps? I'm curious. Send in what you've been up to out here outside of these fairly tight verticals. 1920 calls also going up in September. 23 days to go. And these looks like it was, again, a vertical. 1920, 1940 vertical going up about 600 times on Tuesday. Again, opening. So 1920. So that was already in the money when they put this up. Maybe by the Tuesday. I'll have to go check our levels to see by Tuesday where we were on Tuesday. I have to imagine this wasn't in the money when they put it up. You don't see a lot of in the money verticals going up in the Russell 2. Actually, yeah, we were at 1890 on Tuesday. So this was out of the money. So this is another home run here. Someone, listeners, has been trading 20-point verticals in the Russell 2000 options and looks like they're doing pretty well. These are also still open. So interesting to see when they come for these. We got a 20-point winner here, and you got closing in on it. Not quite there yet. Closing in on a 20-point winner. You have about 20 days to go on these. So they still need a little bit of time for the decay to come out. But so far, listeners, pretty big winners, and they haven't come to take them off yet, which is intriguing. Let's look really quickly since I joked about it earlier. Let's hop on into the S&P, see what's going on out there. With the E-mini, spoiler alert, there's probably going to be a lot of put selling. Let me just prepare you for it now. Right now this week in the E-mini, listeners, 2.67 million contracts on the tape, so a little bit more than copper or Bitcoin options. And of that, 22% going up in the contract, that goes out tomorrow. And of that, oh yeah, I was right, 36 quarter puts. So we're at about a 42.09 right now, listeners. 36 and a quarter puts doing 44,000 contracts this week. And that's not enough for you. The 35 quarter puts doing 51,000. And we also have the 34.75 puts. So the 35 quarter puts go out right now pretty much. 36 quarter puts go out tomorrow. 34.75 puts go out in 4 days. You have 55,000 of those, 43,000 of the 36 quarter puts, and 51,000 of the 35 quarter puts. I mean, it's an embarrassment of premium selling here, listeners, in these contracts. You also have, about 19,000 of the 3,800 puts. Let's see, the 36 quarters, what do we have going on out there? 36 quarters going up 43,000 times, 39 halves, so a little bit more relevant. Those actually have a chance. Those went up 32,000 times. 3,300s going up 30,000 times. It's, I kind of thought a lot of this went the way of the dodo when I left the SPX way back in the day. It does seem like funds have just awakened to this trade again, and they are just ramming money home in the selling. You used to call them teeny puts when they were teeny bid. They're not even teeny bid anymore, listeners. They're just garbage puts. The old analogy of picking up nickels in front of a steamroller kind of applies in this situation. It's working out. It's working out week after week for them. We'll see when we get maybe some big shocks. I mean, they're going far enough out of the money, 36 quarter. You need a pretty impressive. I was joking on the option block earlier. Obviously, we could hit that by Monday, but I don't think realistically we could. That would be quite the apocalyptic move. But so they're banking, obviously. Excuse me. Not going to hit that in the next day. I think we're pretty safe there. And then in the next 4 days on the 34.75 put. So they're going pretty far out. It is just, I mean, these are not free lunch trades either. These tie up a ton of capital. I mean, you got some firm is devoting the entirety of its capital to harvesting, or at least a substantial portion of it, to harvesting this premium every week. We used to joke about these guys in the back of the SPX, but they usually stood far in the back. And they did nothing all day until a crazy bid would pop in for some of these crazy out-of-the-money puts in the book, which is where the orders were placed. And then they would go crazy, and they would yell and sell them in the book and get those. And then they would sit there again the rest of the day. That was the only thing they did. And then over time, they would inevitably blow out. And then someone else would back them again. People like this trade. And I get it. It's easy to put in a pitch deck, and you can sell it to people. Look at this great trade. Look how much money it makes. And the risk can be managed, this and that. The question is how you manage that risk. And seems like some folks are managing it, at least for now, out here in the E-mini S&P, but they continue to just drive hundreds of thousands of contracts into this stuff out here every week. Let's see if we can find something a little bit more meat on the bone. Nope, 3,200 puts going out in 22 days, 24,000 of those. You almost need to filter the numbers, listeners, to get rid of the garbage puts, because that's all that it is. Here we go, 21,000 of the 4,000 puts going up in September this week. So that's something. Pretty active all week long. Obviously, 4,000, a pretty key level. The big day was today, 7,000, about 6,800 yesterday, 5,000 on Monday, 3,000 on Tuesday, back and forth, opening to closing all week long. And we got 3,500 puts in November. It's an embarrassment of puts out here, quite frankly. That's why we don't do S&P too often. It does a lot of paper. And so from that perspective, it merits inclusion. But once you filter out a lot of this noise, it's intriguing out here, to say the least, out here. As we keep on rolling, let's see, we've done equities, we've done metals, we've done ags, even touched on crypto. Let's see, we're not much in our dark side this week, listeners. Let's look to our upside. Unfortunately, can't do lumber. We have a lot of products in our upside. Actually, if we go here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, number 7 to the light side this week, listeners, would have been nat gas, up nearly 5%. So let's extend it to a top 7 and head out to energy. Next.
It's time to tap into the deep options well of black gold, Texas tea, nat gas, and more. It's time to talk energy.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Pop into that drop down. Pop out of equities unless you're just transfixed by all that out-of-the-money put selling in the S&P. Then by all means, hang out there while I talk about nat gas, which is going to be one above it in energy. Then go into product family, go to nat gas, and then right into the product, which is, of course, good old nat gas, ticker symbol LN out here. Nat gas, 893 right now, so a little bit shy of that 9 handle. It's been whipping all over the place, up another 10.75% just since Monday's show. So if you take our frame of reference and adjust it to the beginning of this week, then nat gas is number 2 on our movers and shakers this week. 10.75% to the upside. Let's see how much paper going up out here in nat gas this week. Another somewhat light week. We usually see 400,000+ contracts on the tape in nat gas, maybe 450. Things are starting to get active. We've seen it get close to 1 million on some crazy rock'em sock'em weeks. This week, 360,000. So not exactly blowing the doors off this week, even though it is moving. And of that, kind of playing like an equity this week, we have about 35% of that paper going up in the contract that has 15 days to go, our front contract. So that's where we're hanging out this week. The vol right now, 84 and about a third, up about 4 points. So very frothy, not surprising at all. Nat Gas has been whipping around like crazy out here, listeners. So not surprised to see Nat Gas vol remaining frothy. Pretty much it's 4 times what we're seeing in the equities right now, listeners. So intriguing stuff afoot out here, pretty close to it. In terms of skew, we've got the puts last week, 3.9% cheap. This week, getting cheaper, 6.8% cheap. Nobody wants puts in Nat Gas. Meanwhile, the calls, surprisingly, staying about the same, 5% last week, 5.6% this week. So calls unched, puts coming in. That's kind of intriguing. As we are rallying, usually you expect, if we're rallying aggressively like we did this week, the calls actually catch a bit of a bid. A normal move up the skew, you see the calls would come in and the puts would catch a bid. This week, the calls are staying unched, which is kind of interesting. And also, the most active contract, it was close to a tie. Looks like the 6 puts going out in October. Just ever so gently snatched the number 1 spot by about 200 contracts, listeners. 12,200 of the 6 puts going up in October this week. So we'll start there first. The big day is today, about 8,000 going up today, 2,600 on Wednesday, 1,000 on Tuesday, and not much on Monday. Opening throughout most of the week, but a big day today. Looks like the 7 puts also active, 3,700, so maybe a bit of a 6-7 vertical. Looks like all of those puts were pretty active. The 5 puts, 2,600, 505 puts, 1,600, so people like their funky strips and verticals out here, but they don't quite line up 1-to-1, but it could be a bit of a 6-7, 1x2 going up out there. 12,200 of the 6 puts going up. It's like opening throughout most of the week. And right behind it, we have the 10 calls going out in September. So it's in about 15 days, doing about 12,000. So just barely being edged out by those 6 puts. The big day for these calls is today, 4,300. And they got 3,800 on Monday, 2,000 on Wednesday, 1,700 on Tuesday. So it looks like back and forth opening to closing on these 10 calls, which again, the 10 strike has been a source of fascination ever since the invasion. We've seen it kind of lighting it up for a while there. Then when Nat Gas retreated, not so much. Started seeing action in the 9s and below. Now we're starting to see 10s lighting it up out there again. What do you think, listeners? Nat Gas above the 10 handle in a couple of weeks? We could easily be there. What are your thoughts on it? Looks like the 10 calls are actually pretty active across the board. Dees, you saw about 2,500 of them. 1,000 in Jan of next year, 1,000 in February of next year, 1,000 again in March. Maybe we got some spreads going up there here. Nat Gas. Again, intriguing, very near-dated paper here in Nat Gas, which makes sense. You have a product that's whipping around, showing nearly a triple-digit vol. You want to have some gamma exposure, so you want to be in the near-dated contracts. The longer-term stuff not going to do much for you right now. So makes sense people are piling into these nearer-dated contracts. Let's look really quickly, see if you see any other really active contracts out here. We've got actually the 7 puts going out in about 15 days, doing about 10,500 contracts. A big day also today. Big day for Nat Gas options today. 4,700 today, 3,000 on Wednesday, 1,300 each Monday and Tuesday. It's like opening throughout most of the week. So a lot of opening on the 7 puts, also about 9,500 of the 7.5 puts going up this week as well. Also the big day was today, over half, 5,400 going up today, 2,500 yesterday, about 1,000 on Tuesday, and not much on Monday. Looks like back and forth opening to closing throughout the week on those as well. So 7 puts, 7.5 puts, and 10 calls. Pretty active out here in this SEP contract in Nat Gas. We're kind of coming up against it, listeners. So let's see what you folks have on the brain. A little bit of your futures options feedback.
It's time for your questions, comments, and insights. It's time for Futures Options Feedback. Submit your questions at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, stocktwits.com/optionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com. You can also submit your feedback via our Options Insider Radio Network mobile app, available for iOS, Android, and Kindle Fire devices. You can even ask your questions live via our Mixlr chat room. So grab the Mixlr app or just search for Options Insider at Mixlr.com. That's MIXLR.com.
All right, everybody. Let's get into some of your feedback. First, let's pay off some of our questions of the week. Last week, we asked you guys, not really a futures options question, but it was interesting to our audience nonetheless. We asked you about the artist formerly known as Facebook, aka Meta. They were struggling last week. Decent week this week. We asked you if you had to buy a call or a put, at the money call or put, expiring at the end of the year. Which way would you go? Or are you just done with Meta entirely? And nearly 50% of you, 48.3%, said you're buying that put, so look out below for Meta. 28.3% said you're buying the call, and 23.3% said you're wiping your hands entirely of all things Meta. Can't take it anymore. This week, we've got a question that's been bedeviling a lot of people out there right now. Volatility has many different causes. However, which of the following factors do you feel is the primary driver of the current volatility environment? To give you three choices: earnings season, the Fed, Ukraine, or other. And I'm not going to guess because I see the numbers right in front of me, listeners. Instead, I'll just give you the results. Right now, 65.2% of you are saying the Fed. 21.7% of you are saying other. By the way, if you're going to choose other, we say explain yourself. Put in the replies, DM, somewhere, what your other is so we can discuss it on the show. I'm curious what you folks think the other is that you're voting for. And then number 3, we have earnings season, 8.7%, and Ukraine bringing up the rear with 4.3%. So over there at options, if you want to find that one. Let's have to scroll over that one a little bit. And we got also, really quickly, because it is just, this one's consuming everyone out there right now. Meme stock palooza. That's our other question of the week. We don't usually have two, but this is just, debate has been raging. So we thought we'd put it to you folks to answer it once and for all. We have seen a lot of interesting call paper in names that were pretty hot last year, like your BBIGs and your Varooms and your AMCs. And so does that mean all this stuff's back? Is this crazy call frenzy, the meme stock frenzy, is it back? Yes or no? And right now, you folks are feeling optimistic. You say nearly 72% of you saying yes, and about 28% saying no. If you guys want to get in on that action, at options is the place to go to make your voice heard over there on Twitter. Speaking of making your voice heard, we've got DeAndre here. He says, we need more people out there talking about futures options. Have you thought about a TIFO program, aka Today in Futures Options? I think that would be awesome. Thanks for all that you do. Well, you're welcome, DeAndre, and thanks for taking the time to write in. Yeah, that would be cool. The branding might be a little bit confusing, TIFO and TWIFO. If you have a TIFO, it also kind of maybe eliminates the need for a TWIFO. But yeah, that would be cool. That's a lot of extra work and shows to do. That, quite frankly, right now, we have so many other shows hitting the network right now, it would be hard to squeeze in a daily this week or today in futures options to use your branding out there. Also, a lot of these products, they don't do enough paper to merit it. Obviously, you can talk E-minis and Euro dollars and a handful of others, golds all the time, and they do some numbers. But you get this day in, or today in futures options as you went with the TIFO. Might have some small numbers there. But it's intriguing. I think it might, maybe like a quick alert, something along those lines. It might be kind of fun. I'm just, our bandwidth here is kind of limited right now, DeAndre. It would be cool. Maybe we'll put it in the hopper for down the road. Hey, what do you guys think? You want a daily today in the futures options, as he puts it? Hit us up. Let us know what you think. All right, everybody. Unfortunately, that's going to do it for our This Week in Futures Options program this week. Also going to do it for our broadcast day today. I want to thank everybody who joined us out there, either live in this fun secret chat or, of course, all you folks getting the on-demand version. We love you all. If you're on demand, make sure you get over there at options and make your voice heard before these polls and questions week expire tomorrow. You'll have time by the time the podcast hits the network a little bit later today. Back again tomorrow, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, for volatility views. And then after that, exclusively for our pro members with options oddities. I'm going to tell you a spoiler now, listeners. The Rock Lobster has been messaging me, and he's excited by that name we were just talking about in the last show, PCT. So there's a good chance that one might be making it onto oddities tomorrow. Maybe with some trades, maybe some live trades we got going up there. Never know. You got to tune in. But the Rock Lobster doesn't get excited about much. He's excited by that one. So We shall see what makes it onto the show tomorrow. If you want to learn for yourselves, you want to join in on all the fun, get on the live trading, the analysis, the unusual activity, the pro Q&As, all the good stuff, and a whole bunch more, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go. Of course, you know where to go to learn more about all things futures options. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO, the place to get access to all these great reports because we love you folks, completely for free. And of course, if you guys want more details, more info on what's going on in the crazy world of small caps, we just saw it again this week, moving and shaking like crazy. Small caps back with a vengeance, threatening the 2,000 level again. What does all that mean for you, for your trading, for your portfolio? FTSE Russell, FTSERussell.com is the place to go to learn more. Give them a follow on the old Twitter as well, at FTSE Russell, all one word. That's going to do it for us. Back again, like I said, tomorrow, vol views, then options oddities after that. Then back again next week. Another episode of This Week in Futures Options. Stay safe out there, everybody.
This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world manage risks and seize opportunities. CME Group offers the deepest and most liquid options on futures across all asset classes, including interest rates, equity indexes, foreign exchange, energy, agriculture, and metals. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This Week in Futures Options is also brought to you by FTSE Russell, a leading global provider of benchmarks, analytics, and data solutions. Investors in the U.S. and around the world are using FTSE Russell indexes to benchmark their investment performance and create investment funds, ETFs, structured products, and index-based derivatives. Many Options Insider Radio Network listeners will be familiar with the Russell 2000 Index. Russell 2000 futures and options are currently trading on the Chicago Board Options Exchange and CME Group. For more information, please visit FTSERussell.com, CBOE.com, and CMEGroup.com. This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute trading advice or the solicitation of purchases or sale of any futures or options. The rulebook of the applicable exchange should be consulted as the authoritative source on all current contract specifications. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.